So hello everyone, it's Ewan for SimBoxx, and I'm joined by Kenny Pearce and Henry Folks of the new Professional Boxers Affiliation. Obviously, it's been all over boxing media the last few weeks. We've had a lot of intrigue and interest. So first of all, guys, give me the pitch. I want to hear, what we need the Professional Boxers Affiliation for, what you guys are going to do, where it's come from. Just go on the elevator pitch, hit me with it, and then we'll see how we go from there.
Yeah, so I'll start. Pretty much what the Professional Boxers Affiliation is. It's a representative body which we're looking to start, which was similar to the PFA, the PC, all the other elite sports in the UK, and we're looking to base ourselves around three main elements that we feel that are important to boxers and boxers' welfare. So mental well-being being one, and we'll be looking to use mental wellbeing charities as well as counsellors that we know to get a professional viewpoint on how to best treat mental wellbeing within the sport and boxer welfare, but not just treating it, but also having the schemes in place that will just support boxers more generally. And then we have financial planning, which will be based around a Professional Boxers Affiliation pension scheme, which will be a trust-based scheme, which will use the money that we gather from our funding and create almost like a pot of money, which each boxer will have their individual personal pension plan that they'll be able to contribute to as time goes on. And then finally, we will be focusing on retirement as well. So we'll, at the PBA, we'll be making our own personal retirement plan for individual boxers that come to us and want to retire, with the correct support system around them. And we'll be using, again, other charities such as Life After Professional Sport and Switch to Play that we've been speaking to recently. So using those resources that we get from them and their knowledge, as well as what we feel that we can offer, and hopefully with those three main points that I've just made there, we can improve boxer welfare throughout the year. And yeah, where it's come from, it's just something that myself and Henry discussed ages ago. And then towards the back end of last year, we've put the wheels in motion. We're talking to a lot of people behind the scenes and, trying to get the pension scheme set up. We're talking about the retirement plans. And then at the start of this year was actually the start of our official launch and going on social media and doing interviews and podcasts such as this. So yeah, all going well so far, and hopefully we can just keep pushing it forward as much as we can.
Yeah, fantastic. So if I just kind of want to ask a little bit more about the structure. Obviously, there's kind of elements of a charity here. Obviously, you've got a big donate button on the website. That's obviously a kind of, there's a crowdfunding element, but there's also almost a trade union type body here, where you're kind of lobbying for different things for boxers. Do you want to clear up for me just exactly how it functions in terms of membership, who can join, how you join, and then obviously what services you're providing for that kind of membership? Obviously, it seems there's a kind of, you've got a very broad, ambitious kind of structure. How does that structure what is it in terms of, is it a trade union? Is it a charity? Is it a representative organization? What are the kind of nuts and bolts of it, if you will?
Yeah, so to answer your first question about structure with regards to whether it's a charity or a representative body, in a way it's both. I mean, we want to have a trust arm, which a lot of other sporting association bodies do. So the PFA have a charitable arm. The Cricketers Association has a charitable arm. Sorry, is it all right? Is my Wi-Fi?
Right.
Okay.
Just a little bit of a problem, but carry on.
Sorry. Yeah, so as I was saying, the PFA have a charitable arm. The Cricketers Association have a charitable arm. And we want to do the same as well. So we can use that to fundraise and pay for mental health treatment with the money fundraised for that. That's what the Cricketers Association do. And then, but also we want to have our own limited company, which you've already established, and that will be the Professional Boxers Affiliation. And that will hopefully make its money by getting money from broadcasters and other sponsorship deals and things like that. So in answer to your question, both a charity and a representative body. In terms of who can join, it will be current professional boxers and retired boxers and amateur boxers, any form of boxers really, just whether they're looking to turn pro or they've just left the game. We want to help all of them. And how can they join? Well, at the moment, if they're interested, just literally get in touch with us through social media or an email, and that can be done that way. But obviously in the future, we'll have a more structured sign-up process. But we're, at the moment, our main focus is just raising awareness about ourselves.
So at the moment, there's no kind of cost structure. There's no buying into this as an association. It's simply a kind of registering your interest and then kind of building on that. Is that where you're at the moment?
I'd say so, yeah.
All right. Okay. So one of the questions I do want to ask is about you guys specifically. And, obviously we've had Barry McGuigan, I know, flavour of the month at the moment, but Barry McGuigan obviously famously tried to set up a professional boxers association. He is still nominally the chairman of that. Where are you guys going to succeed where he's failed? Where are you guys going to succeed? What do you guys bring to the table that can change boxing? We've had lots of attempts at unionisation of fighters, associations of fighters in this country and abroad. What have you guys got that can change the game?
I feel like what we've got now is more than in previous attempts. There's definitely times have changed now. I think there's a lot more awareness and willingness to push forward mental health schemes a lot within the sport. Definitely, we've seen over the last couple of years the amount of boxers that come out and spoken openly about mental health, and that gives us a good stead because that's what we're built on. The main functions of financial planning and the retirement plans that we look to build all lead back to the mental well-being of boxers. So we feel like with that USP, we can really push that forward when we're trying to get funding. And yeah, in terms of just what myself and Henry will do, we're very passionate about this work. We are both boxing fans, and we feel that we have the capability and the desire to really push forward welfare within the sport. And we've been speaking to multiple boxers, current and retired, managers within the sport, as I mentioned earlier, the charities and organisations that we're looking to work with. So it's not just myself and Henry doing it. We're built almost like a loose conglomerate of myself and boxers and organisations that we can all work together and hopefully just keep pushing forward these schemes and the importance of welfare within the sport. Because if we don't, and again, in say 10 years time, we're having this conversation about welfare within the sport, people are going to keep falling into the trap where there isn't a support structure in place for boxers. So, it's just being proactive. Myself and Henry, what makes a difference is that we have to be proactive and keep pushing forward rather than reactive and, letting things happen and reacting later on.
In terms of researching where the other bodies have gone wrong, and obviously I know you've been heavily influenced by the PFA, the Football Association, that you've spoken about quite a lot. Where do you think that association has succeeded and previous attempts at boxing associations have failed? And obviously, where do you think you can bring that success away from, you take away the success and put it into where there's been failures in the past? What failures do you see in terms of the unionization type efforts in boxing and where others have succeeded? What are the specific lessons that you're going to bring to boxing and why this one's going to work?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, just to echo what Kenny said previously, but also we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're basing ourselves on a very similar model as to what the PFA, the Jockeys Association, the Cricketers, and all the other associations are based on. We've based ourselves on them, and I mean, I think we've got the right structure in place to succeed. But at the end of the day, we need the support of the stakeholders in the sport to make this possible. We can have partnerships and plans and support of boxers, but if we don't get the support of the broadcasters or the support of the promoters, and or even the support of boxers, it's not going to work. So I think that's definitely the most important thing. I had a look through when I was in Waterstones a couple of months ago. I had a look through Barry McGuigan's autobiography, and there was a couple of pages on the PBA, and he put down the failure of that to him having the wrong organisational structure, and also a lack of support from boxers at the time. I mean, that comment's probably just made him more unpopular, but I mean, we've I think, as Kenny said, times have hopefully changed. The more openness with regards to mental health, I think, will help us. So yeah, we've just got to keep on doing what we do, and as I said, hopefully attract the attention of the sports main stakeholders, because without them this won't be possible.
Obviously there's lots of stakeholders in boxing, and it's attractive proposition what you guys have got going for the likes of obviously fighters, managers. There's a kind of an incentive there, but what incentive do you guys have for promoters? Because obviously they're always going to be anti anything that messes with their profits, that messes with their fighters. That kind of the collective action that this offers is going to negatively impact those who are financially benefiting from fighters, mostly managers, promoters. Okay, so where do you think you can get them on board? How do you think you can change what is kind of a culture of exploitation, I would say, coming out of that kind of the long held tradition of the fighter, the manager, the promoter? Where are you guys going to be able to break that, and how are you going to be able to build those relationships with guys who perhaps have a vested interest against collective action in the community of fighters?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because we don't want to be in a situation where we have collective action and we've got all these boxers signed on, and they're unhappy with certain things that promoters are doing, and we go, right, that's it, let's strike and let's do this, because that's nothing that we want to do. In terms of winning over the actual support of promoters, I feel like we're just filling the void that's within the sport in terms of boxer welfare. I don't think it really falls into the jurisdiction of either promoter or manager. I think that as you say, they have to look after their own revenue streams somehow. So I don't think that we're actually treading anyone's toes by taking it away from promoters or managers. I think what we're actually doing is, as I said, just filling a gap within the sport that there isn't any governance for boxer welfare, and that includes the board as well. That these bodies, it doesn't fall within their duty and their jurisdiction to be able to look after boxers' welfare in comparison to other sports. You look at the clubs and the in the league sports and clubs and that, they all have their association body that specifically looks after welfare. It isn't reliant on the club, although the club in cases will obviously look after the player if they come forward. That body of the PCA and the PFA and the PJA, their role is to look after boxer welfare, and it doesn't seem to be the case for those within the sport who are already there, the current stakeholders. So that's why a new body in place can help fill that void.
I think it's a really interesting point you raised there, because what I kind of sort of want to move this onto is what happens when there is a conflict. Because obviously you're looking out for fighter welfare. We look at the likes of Don King in America. He's famously mistreated fighters. Okay, I'm not suggesting that Eddie or Frank or anyone in this country would do that. But where would you guys stand if you've got a boxer, their welfare is being infringed, or they believe so, by a promoter or manager? We've had it in this country with the likes of Tony Bellew, had lawsuits with Frank Warren. We've had those kind of conflicts of interest. At what level do you guys step in? Is it personal well-being? Is it financial well-being? Is it retirement well-being? Or is there an in-career, is there an activist element to this? Will you guys be standing up in specific cases? Will there be a vested interest in those situations where there is conflict in the sport? Because I think that's a really interesting kind of grey area where I understand you're filling in a gap, and it's a recognizable gap, but there is ways in which you're going to extend into the existing world of boxing, and that's one that I find kind of interesting in what you're saying there.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think, the only way to answer that is just to say that our sole priority is boxer welfare. So, that's what we'd want to be there for. Obviously, we'd side with the boxer if it came to that. As you said, hopefully that wouldn't happen in the UK. But if it ever did, we just work with the boxer and his team around him in terms of the managers and try and get a satisfactory outcome for all sides. But obviously, with the sole purpose being hope the boxer's okay and get him through to the next stage of his career, wherever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you guys have stressed heavily the kind of the mental health focus and the charities that you're working with. Do you want to take me through like what charities you're working with, but also kind of how you're developing a kind of a more holistic approach to mental health in boxing, and how you're kind of becoming that broad church for mental health and mental well-being in boxing? I know you cite a few examples where we've had troubles with boxing and mental health. Just take me through that side of it. I know you mentioned it as number one as the main thing you guys have got going on.
Yeah, so I'll mention the charities that we've spoken to, which are both Sporting Chance and Cognacity, and they're both widely recognised within the sporting association bodies that they all use, and they all use the resources that they put forward for educational purposes, but also for treatment. So whether it's residential treatment or counselling treatment, they work specifically around that area. So both within education and treatment, that they both work. In terms of personally, myself and Henry, we've also spoken to counsellors, so one-on-one, speaking to counsellors who, are boxing fans and what methods they feel they could use within the sport. And they always talk about just generally being open to talking. Boxing is a great coping mechanism for taking out your issues of life. You're going into the gym, you're training, you're smashing a bag or you're smashing someone up in the ring. When you retire and that gets taken away from you, you're also taking away their coping mechanism. So throughout their career, they get encouraged to talk about their emotions, talk about their issues, and not bottle it up and use boxing as a coping mechanism to take out that anger or that issues that they have. So that's the way we've sort of looked at mental well-being. We try to get, as you say, a holistic approach of it all, and try and get again a broad understanding from both professional point of view, one-on-one with a counsellor and with the charities, and then just come together and try and bring in a scheme which we feel will be best suited to the boxer when we speak to them on a personal basis, rather than having a one-size-fits-all. We want it so boxers can come to us and we can adjust things and see what their issues are and who they could speak to and who they would most benefit from speaking to.
It's a very, very interesting proposition. The only kind of follow-up that I have on that, because I think that's an excellent answer, is what can boxers do now? I know you guys are in a very much a setting up phase. What advice do you have? We've got a lot of professionals that follow us at SimBoxx, things like that. What advice do you have now, like active now? What have you learned from that? You've been building this repertoire of your scheme. What can people do now? Where can people go now as you cement yourselves?
For any retired boxers, I'm not going to name any names, but I've been speaking to a few recently retired fighters at the moment, and seeing how we can help with them, because as I said, as Kenny said, the services with regards to retirement transition, they're already established. They don't require any funding from us. So if you need advice with that, come to us. We'll see what we can do. With regards to, and I'd even echo that for the mental health side of things as well. I'd say if you do need help, specific sporting help, make yourself known to us, and again, we'll see what we can do, because I think we've built up a lot of these contacts within the sporting world to help these sportsmen and women, and I think they would be able to do it at the moment, regardless of funding and things like that. I know Kenny had a chat with the people at Cognacity the other day, and they basically said as long as boxers are getting help, we'll discuss a form of funding later. So that's what I'd say to current boxers who want to contact us, is please don't hesitate to do that, and we'll just see what we can do.
Fantastic. So I want to move on to the pension scheme that you guys have mentioned. Obviously, that's kind of another core value of what you guys have got going. Is that up and running now? What can you run me through some of the intricacies of that? Who's underwriting it, that sort of thing? Where you guys are hoping to build that, where it is now? Where if it's not up and running now, when's the launch, that sort of thing? Obviously, just take me through that element of it, because obviously I think there's a lot to unpack from that.
Yeah, so the pension scheme is probably the most attractive scheme that we'll offer, and the most compelling one in terms of, because it hasn't really been introduced before. So in terms of what it actually is, it's a trust-based scheme, which, as I mentioned earlier, will essentially be a pot of money, which will be gathered from the funding that we get from broadcasters. And then from that pot of money, there'll be individual personal pension plans that will be given to boxers, and that will be contributed to on the amount of rounds that they complete in terms of scheduled rounds. So if you're scheduled a 12-round fight and you complete it in one round, the funding that you'll contribute will be 12 rounds. So that's how it will work. And that will be governed by a board of trustees. So myself and Henry will sit on the board of that, but we'll also be looking to bring in both boxers who are current and retired. Anyone who represents the sport, whether they're not a boxer or they're a retired manager or, you know, agent or whatever, we'll be looking to bring people like that in as well. And the pension consultants that we'll be using for that are Cartledge Moorland, who work with the Professional Jockeys Association, and they got recommended to us. And yeah, they set up the pension schemes for the jockeys. And year on year, that's been working fine, and everyone's happy with it over there. So we spoke to them, and they felt like we could implement the same, but within boxing. And it would just be about, in terms of when it's actually set up. It's not obviously set up yet. We have to wait until we have the funding for that, until, you know, boxers can actually access the money. But there will be an eligibility criteria that boxers have to fill in order to join, and that will be discussed when we have a board of trustees set up. But most likely will be something like scheduled 80 rounds and be active for, say, 4 years. And it just looks to bring in boxers who, you know, actually do boxing as a career, because we know how easy it is nowadays to just, well, I say nowadays, forever, to become a professional boxer. But I was talking, you know, in relation to like YouTube boxers become professional boxers, but it stops anyone like that. It's just people sign up to be a professional boxer and then be able to jump in on the pension scheme. So it's for boxers who actually train boxing as a career, and that's their choice. And yeah, that's when we'll find out more once we get the funding, when it will be set up, and we'll let people know straight away. But that's the more you know, the logistics of it, and just a basis outline.
I think that's really important to get those things. Obviously, a couple of follow-ups. The first is negotiations for your trustees. Obviously, I'm not expecting you to start naming any names or anything like that, but how far advanced the negotiations in that sort of direction? What sort of time scale are we looking at for people being able to access these services?
So we'll hopefully be looking to have the pension scheme set up, say, well, it all depends on funding, but we'll definitely be, you know, before the second half of the year, we'll be hoping to have that all set up. And that will obviously come in with the trustees as well. So once we have a board of trustees properly part of the scheme, and they've written over the trust deed with our pension consultants, and we have the funding in place, then it can be fully accessed. But we don't want to jump the gun with it and say the pension scheme set up and, you know, throw it out there when it's not compliant with certain HMRC issues as well. So we have to make sure that all those grounds are covered properly before we do anything to do with the pension scheme, because it probably is the most complex scheme that we have set up, and we need to make sure that it's 100% working properly, and everyone who can access it will actually gain the money at the end of their career, because obviously that's the most important thing, rather than rushing it, as I say, and not having that properly in place.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you. The second follow-up that I had is about, obviously we have a lot of journeyman fighters in this country. We have a lot of road warriors, as we like to call them, you know, guys who have other jobs, but, you know, they fight a lot of the weekends, or they fight here and there when they can, they train and they give a lot to boxing. You know, there's a lot of, without journeyman, and boxing wouldn't be the sport in this country that it is. You know, they fill up those small horse shows. How would that affect their eligibility for the pension? Obviously, if they're working two jobs, what's their status within your organisation at large, as well as within, kind of specifically to do with the pension, but generally within the Professional Boxers Association? If you know, there's a lot of journeymen in this country who have another job, a full-time 9 to 5, and then they box on the weekends. What's their status within the Professional Boxers Affiliation?
Well, I mean, we've discussed with Henry, myself and Henry, sorry, have discussed this about journeymen, and, you know, they will have to be a part of the Professional Boxers Affiliation. There's no two ways about that. If they fill the criteria of, as I say, it's most likely going to be scheduled 80 rounds, active for 4 years, then they will be able to contribute to it. And, you know, it's not obviously just journeymen as well who box two jobs, work two jobs whilst boxing. You know, you have people fighting for British titles who are working two jobs, and they'll be able to contribute to that pension scheme. It will just be the money that they earn from boxing that will contribute to it, not from their second job. And, you know, when we speak to the Jockeys Association, it's the same over there. A lot of jockeys work two jobs. And, you know, obviously, jockeys are probably a lot more fast-paced sport in terms of their racing, you know, maybe 3-4 times a week. So, yeah, everyone who fills the criteria will be able to actually join the scheme, as long as they obviously fill the criteria, whether it's a journeyman or, you know, a European title fighter. Anyone will be able to join it as long as they fill the criteria.
That's great. I think we've run through all the questions I had to ask. Where can everyone find you? Boxers and the public alike. You know, plug your social medias, anything you've got going on. That's your time now.
Yeah, so our Twitter is at PB Affiliation. And that's the same for the Instagram. And then the website is www.pbaffiliation.co.uk. But if you could link it in the description and stuff.
Of course, yeah. Obviously, you'll be able to find these guys' Twitter and their page on. Obviously, they will have already seen it, but on the tweets and the website and everything. So thank you very much, guys. Cheers.